So what is stress? What does stress mean to you? If you struggle to answer that question, don't worry, so did we when we came to existence over 12 years ago, because depending on who you're speaking to, you'll get a very different response. The best definition of stress that I ever came across came from an engineer, a structural engineer, and what they offered me was this. That equation stands for force over area equals pressure. Now don't worry, if that means nothing to you, it meant nothing to me when it was originally offered to me. However, when I asked him to explain what he meant by that in more detail, it was the analogy he offered me at that point was so clear, so powerful, so concise, it's what we ended up adopting as our own definition. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. So before I start, I'm going to apologise in advance for my artistic skills, but hopefully you'll all figure out what I'm drawing. Yes, you guessed it, it's Tower Bridge. And let's say on this particular day, Transport for London have gone on strike and parked all of their red double-decker buses filled to the top with union reps all discussing their various demands. Because of a tidal surge on the Thames, HMS Belfast has been washed onto the bridge, and because of capacity issues at Heathrow Airport, the Mayor has sanctioned the building of another runway, a temporary runway that's running across the top of the bridge. And we've got some Airbus A380s, Boeing 747s that have landed there. An escape at London Zoo, some elephants, rhinos and giraffes have rushed onto the bridge because they heard there was some food on there. If we put enough load, enough weight, enough pressure onto that bridge, what's going to happen eventually? Yes, that's right, the bridge will collapse. Under excessive load, regardless of how well constructed the bridge is, whether it's Tower Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge or the Severn Bridge, every bridge with enough pressure applied will ultimately collapse. But before it collapses, how do we know? What feedback will we get to suggest it's not bearing the load effectively? It'll bow, it'll buckle, it'll groan, it'll creak, it'll crack, it'll fracture. And when that's happening, we've got one of two choices, one of two things that we can do to prevent the bridge from going on to collapse. Either, number one, we could remove the load, or secondly, concrete blocks, iron girders underneath to shore it up and better equip it to bear that load effectively. Regardless of how mentally tough, how resilient you are, how broad your shoulders are, every human being, if enough pressure is applied, will eventually collapse. What does that collapse look like? It can look like different things for different people. It could lead to a breakdown. It could lead to serious health issues like a heart attack. Or sadly, what's becoming more and more commonplace in modern society is people taking their own lives. But before we get to the point where the bridge collapses, we all know we'll get the feedback to suggest the bridge is not bearing the load effectively because there'll be that bowing, buckling, groaning and creaking. And when we get better equipped to pick up those early signs, both within ourselves and the people around us, we can take the necessary action to ensure that person never gets to the point of collapse.